In 16 hours, this game sold over 2 million copies. In those same 16 hours, the company that made it watched almost a third of its value get wiped out. Same game, same day, after 6 years of waiting. This is Crimson Desert, and how both of those things can be true at the exact same time is the most confusing launch story of 2026. Because the nightmare everyone's screaming about, the bugs, the AI art, the broken controls, that's not actually the nightmare. The real one started years earlier, back when nobody, including the people building it, could agree on what this game even was. Let's rewind to 2019. Pearl Abyss isn't some no-name studio. These are the people behind Black Desert Online, a Korean MMO famous for two things: insanely good-looking character creation and a world that runs on their own in-house engine. When this studio wants to show off graphics, it usually wins. So in November 2019, when they announced a brand new game called Crimson Desert, everybody paid attention. But here's the part people forget. The original pitch wasn't the game we got. Back then, Crimson Desert was a prequel to Black Desert, an MMO, a big online world, large-scale battles, the whole online package. Hold on to that word, MMO, because it does not survive. December 2020, the Game Awards. Pearl Abyss drops a trailer, and it looks nothing like what they'd pitched. Instead of a faceless avatar you build yourself, there's a named hero, Cliff, in cinematic cutscenes with an actual story. That wasn't an MMO trailer, that was a single-player blockbuster trailer, and the internet absolutely lost it. Then in 2021, Pearl Abyss made it official. Crimson Desert is no longer an MMO, it is a single-player action-adventure game. Now think about what that actually means. They didn't tweak a feature or cut a mode. They threw out the entire foundation of the game and started rebuilding it as a completely different genre. That's not a delay, that's a do-over. And that one decision is where the real 6-year nightmare begins. Here's the brutal thing about pivoting that hard. The clock doesn't stop ticking while you do it. After 2021, Crimson Desert basically vanished. Year after year, almost nothing. The loose launch window everybody had penciled in came and went. No firm date, no real updates, just silence stretching from 2021 all the way into 2023. Fans started doing that thing where they wonder if a game is quietly dying. Then 2024 hit, and suddenly, relief. Pearl Abyss rolled out at Gamescom, and event after event with gameplay that genuinely stunned people. A dense, gorgeous open world called Pywell, a combat system that looked deep and brutal, some of the best looking console visuals anybody had seen in years. The reaction was electric. After all that quiet, it looked like the gamble had completely paid off. But that relief didn't last either, because every single time a date got close, it slipped. In mid-2025, a rumor went around that the game was dropping November 2nd. Pearl Abyss shot it down. Fake. Then, on an earnings call, the real news landed. The late 2025 launch they've been targeting was getting pushed again, this time into early 2026. Their official reasons? Voiceover work, console certification, coordinating the physical release with outside partners. Translation: a game this enormous that had switched genres mid-flight had a lot of loose ends still flapping in the wind. Finally, in September 2025, on Sony's State of Play stage, they said it out loud. March 19th, 2026. Locked. Pre-orders live, including a collector's edition that ran almost $300. $300. January 2026, the game officially goes gold. Development done. No more delays. More than 6 years of waiting, almost over. But there was one weird detail right before launch. When review copies went out to critics, they were PC only. No console review keys, which means critics literally could not test how the game ran on a PlayStation 5 before launch day. For a game whose entire sales pitch is how jaw-dropping it looks, that's a really strange thing to keep in the dark. And then March 19th arrived, and everything everyone was quietly afraid of happened at once. The reviews landed, and after 6+ years of build-up, the number was 78. 78 on Metacritic, around 79-80 on OpenCritic. Now, 78 is not a bad score. For a massive open-world game, that's genuinely solid. But solid is not what you market for 6 years. The hype promised an all-timer, a Skyrim killer. The reviews said, good game, real problems. Gorgeous world, clunky controls, messy story, unbalanced boss fights, and frame rates that tanked the second a crowd showed up. And in the games business, there's a brutal little rule nobody outside the industry talks about. The magic number is 80. Cross 80 plus and a AAA game is supposed to hit a certain level of sales. Land under it, and the money people panic. Crimson Desert landed at 78. The day those reviews dropped, Pearl Abyss's stock got absolutely hammered, shedding close to a third of its value in the sell-off. Let that sink in. A reported 200 billion won, roughly $130 million, and 7 years of development, and a 2-point miss on a review website torched a massive chunk of the company's value basically overnight. That's the twist almost nobody saw coming. Not the game flopped, the game didn't flop. It reviewed fine, and the market treated it like a catastrophe anyway. And the launch wasn't done embarrassing them yet. Within about 48 hours, players started posting screenshots of in-game paintings and props that looked off. Smudged faces, hands and anatomy that made zero sense. The unmistakable fingerprints of AI-generated art sitting right there inside a full-priced $60 game. Pearl Abyss came clean fast. They admitted that some 2D art was made with, and these are their words, experimental AI generative tools early in development, meant only as placeholder, and that it accidentally survived into the final build. They apologized, admitted they should have disclosed it, and promised to audit the entire game and patch the slop out. 6 years in development, and they couldn't find the AI art in their own game. Then there was the Intel situation. If you owned an Intel Arc graphics card, the game flat out refused to boot, just a wall telling you your GPU wasn't supported. And here's the kicker, Intel publicly said they had offered Pearl Abyss optimization help throughout development. The studio quickly reversed course and promised Arc support was coming, but the message was already out. Corners had been cut and someone forgot to uncut them. So that's the full Nightmare scoreboard. Below target reviews, a stock crash, a eye slop, won't even launch on some hardware, controls reviewers called wonky, a story players called a mess. And now for the part that flips this entire story on its head. The players did not care. Remember those 2 million copies in 16 hours? That number just kept climbing, past 4 million in the weeks that followed. On Steam, Crimson Desert peaked at nearly 250,000 people playing at the exact same moment. One of the biggest launches on the entire platform all year. Sure, it wasn't Elden Ring or Cyberpunk numbers, but it was a monster. And here's the kicker. The players didn't just buy it, they slowly fell for it. The user score launched down in the low 7s, mixed and messy, right alongside the critics. But as the patches rolled in, it climbed, past 8, then into the mid-80s, while the critic score barely moved off 77. The press said disappointing. The people actually grinding hundreds of hours started saying misunderstood masterpiece. Same game, wildly different verdicts. Then Pearl Abyss did something a lot of studios just don't. They patched like their lives depended on it. Within the first month, one update alone shipped over 100 fixes, smoothing out the controls, squashing bugs, swapping out the AI art, and I'm not making this up, adding a bunch of new animals and handing the main character a shotgun. The game critics reviewed on day one wasn't even the same game a few weeks later. So here's the real answer to the question this whole story has been circling. What actually went wrong over 6 years? It wasn't the bugs, it wasn't even the AI art, it was an identity crisis. This game spent half its life not knowing what it was. It was born an MMO and reborn as a single-player epic, and you can see the scar tissue from that switch smeared all over the launch. Systems piled on top of systems, a quest line reportedly bolted on late, placeholder art that survived because the scope never stopped shifting underneath it. When a project changes what it fundamentally is halfway through, 6 years stops sounding like a long time. It starts sounding like barely enough. The Nightmare and the success story aren't two different stories, they're the same one. Crimson Desert is what happens when sky-high ambition and a half-finished identity ship on the same disc, and somehow, against all of it, still sell 4 million copies. So I'm throwing this one to you. After 6 years of development, a stock crash, AI slop, and a game that wouldn't even boot for some people, is a 78 actually a failure? Or did a good but messy RPG that moved 4 million copies just prove that review scores don't mean what we think they mean anymore? Drop your verdict down in the comments. Was Crimson Desert worth the 6-year wait? Or is it a cautionary tale about believing the hype? And if you actually bought the $300 collector's edition, I especially need to hear from you. No judgment. Okay, a little judgment.